Yo, what's up? If you don't know me, I go by 20 Paths on the internet. I've been mixing for 4 years, and I also run a school community, Simple Mixes. Check it out in the link below. Today I just want to talk about what I most enjoy about mixing. Now, the first thing that I like about mixing is that everything's like its own little math problem, and what I mean by that is that both will be handed the same things to work with, and they both get to the same point B. So they start at the same point A and they get to the same point B. It's just they took different routes up the mountain to get to that point B. And what I like about that is it shows off that not everybody thinks the exact same. Some people might think in a more simplistic term, or to where they're like either using less plugins to get to that same point B, or they're just using different plugins that give it a slightly different sound to then get to that point B, or what they're actually adjusting in the mix. They have more or less value on certain frequency ranges that they enjoy, but they will generally get to the same conclusion where it sounds so much better than it was before. And anybody that listens to both of their work, they would agree that it sounds way better. Now, which one sounds more better, that's subjective in my opinion. There is a science to get good mixes, but at the same time, you're not mixing to a science. You're not mixing for the purpose of trying to get the scientifically most translatable sound that you want. You try to favor what you value most, and when you're mixing, like your job is to make what you or the artist find most appealing about the sound or the song to stand out, and then balance that with everything else, but still have it to where it's still there. You're not taking it away. And then it's up for the mastering engineer to then translate that everywhere, if you get what I mean. And I just enjoy the fact there is no one exact way to do everything right, because it's all subjective. So everybody has their own way of getting up that mountain. Some may be faster than others, some may be slower than others, but some may like the slowness in the journey along the way type shit. And some might want to just get up that mountain fast and just get to the top. It's all subjective, yet they still get to the top, is what I'm trying to say. I just find that very beautiful, if that makes sense. The next thing that I do really like about mixing is the satisfaction you get from turning something that didn't sound good before to then making it sound great. And when you're at the top of the mountain, basically just recognizing that you just turned something from good to bad, and you're really just pleased with how it sounds. It's only whenever you're finished mixing that you can look back on what you just worked on and be like, damn, I did a really good job. I really like how this came out. Or you might look back and be like, I don't think this turned out as well as I had hoped. Let me go make it better. At least that's the way I think. If I didn't like how it is at the end, I figured that there's some way that I quote unquote messed up, and I have to go back and then make it better, because the goal is just making it better. Like, there's definitely been times where I started a mix and maybe like an hour and a half, 2 hours later, I'm done, and then I look back and I compare it to some other mixes that I believe to sound good, and somewhere along the way I zoomed in too much instead of looking at the big picture. So then I just scrap the whole thing and just start over. That's pretty much what you have to do, in my opinion. It's almost like a sense of being grateful. That's the best way that I can express to you how it feels to me. Now, this is another point that I brought up earlier, but this is like more in depth. So there is a science to getting your mixes to sound good, yet it still remains subjective, because what you value may not be what somebody else values. So especially if you're the one making the song, or the artist or whatever, they might value the tonality of a synth, a certain sound or a characteristic of a guitar, like a certain tone of the kick, snare, whatever it is, and they want to make sure that they preserve that, because that's what gives it the entire song its character. Yet you still have to balance that with everything, that way it's not overpowering, everything has its own room, yet it still remains noticeable, if that makes sense. Like when somebody asks me for a mix critique, I speak in terms of what I value in a mix. So what they value might not be exactly what I value, but generally they'll be the same because of a certain science that you have to apply to mixing. I'll give you an example. So I just mix critiqued one of my buddies. He sent me one of the songs to give my take on the mix, and some parts of it, they sounded either like some frequency ranges. I thought that they could be brought down a little bit more than what they were, just because it would make everything else more clear. It would open it up more. But this is just what I'm hearing, if that makes sense. So what he's hearing may not be what I'm hearing. This is where we get into the issue of like your playback system. Like me, I mix on HiFiMan headphones that are EQ'd. He does not. So he hears things differently than I do. And then on top of that, what he values may not be what I value, like, or what the artist values. So he brought up a great point. I told him that the bass was a little bit too loud. Like it's relatively good, but it's a little too loud for me personally. So whenever I told him that, he told me that the artist wanted the bass a little bit louder, which is completely fair. Like that, who am I to tell him to tell the artist the bass is too loud? You know, like that's what they want. But like I said, it's still subjective. It has to be within reason, or like a generality. Another thing that I love about mixing is going from genre to another genre. So the way you might mix one genre is not the same way you would mix another one, generally speaking, according to your values and according to what you're hearing on your playback system. So sometimes I might mix more alternative stuff, like some rock, some new metal, or some shit like that. And sometimes, well, most times, I'll mix some rap or some club music, or some music that uses more synthesizers, or some music that uses more drums. Like this could be rap, club, house, rock, new metal. I never really do lo-fi stuff. I would like to though. The last thing that I want to talk about is just listening back on old mixes to see how much you've grown and what you've changed. Sometimes you might not even grow, sometimes you might stay stagnant, but what are you measuring growth on? Like, growth on what? This will clearly be different for everybody. So what you're focusing on now in mixing might be something that you completely ignore a couple months down the road, a year down the road, 2 years down the road. Like whenever I listen to songs that I did like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, they sound bad to me because I've learned more and I've done more. I have more experience, and I would now do things differently than I did then. So there's a lot that I would change, and because of that, I find that it's worse because I knew less and I had less experience. I mean, even like a day, like mixes from the day prior, I listen to them and I'm like, I think that clap might be too loud. I'm hearing a little bit too much honkiness, too much sibilance. The hi-hats are too loud. Whatever it is, like something might be off and you might like, let me change that real quick. Nah, but yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. See ya.